Hello, well, I was gonna say hello, my Ramon, but I believe you're probably your own Ramon.
Hey there, and hi everybody. Hope you're all having a wonderful Thursday. Thank you so much for joining in today.
I mean, I do hate to belabor the Thursday point, but it's effectively Friday Eve. Like this is almost the weekend, and how terribly exciting.
Indeed. In fact, here in Austria, it's a holiday, and so what a lot of folks do is they take tomorrow off, and they this is in German called a Fenstertag, a window day.
Is it a window day? Oh, like a stretch holiday, isn't it? What's This is a quiz question, but what's the holiday?
Uh,
Oh,
so I think
oh,
some kind of ascension.
you're fine. I also do not know what holiday it is in Austria today, so I'm just being especially mean. When I lived in Japan, we'd be like, "Yes, it's a holiday." And folks would be like, "What kind of holiday?" We're like, "Oh, mind I don't go to work." So I'm a very big fan of like, "Hey, it's a day off for mysterious reasons." In the United Kingdom, we have beautiful, majestic, deeply meaningful holidays like May Bank Holiday and Midsummer Bank Holiday. Like, really, a day off's a day off. I'm never going to complain.
Same here. I should take the time to learn these more. Well,
So, we're going to do the most exciting stuff possible today, right?
absolutely. We're going to be setting up our machine to do some code contributions to Free Code Camp.
And this is challenging because this is like our last stop before we actually get to do contributions.
Absolutely. We're going to set up our machine. They've got a series of learning outcomes we're hoping to leave today with. What we're going to be doing is following along the guide that has been very kindly provided by Free Code Camp to set up their code base and be able to run it on my computer.
Yeah. And for those of you following along at home, both Ramon and I used to be teachers, used to work in education context. So we're so boring about promising you learning outcomes. And to promise you some learning outcomes out of this, sort of our contract with you, by the end of this session, we hope that you're going to be able to look for, like find, and then follow along with a setup guide for a new open source project, even if it's not Free Code Camp. We think that we're going to show you how to set up your developer experience to contribute to Free Code Camp specifically. So if you follow along with us, we think that you should be able like set up your environment for this specific project. And we're going to talk to you about this, about when and how to stop and search for additional information when you get stuck. I don't mean to promise you heartache, but eventually you'll get stuck, right? Um, and then at the end, we'll be running the project.
Indeed. Yeah. So a little bit of context for how we'll be doing this today. What you see here is my computer running Windows 10. So it's not. So we'll be installing, setting everything up. Uh, we'll be setting everything up with Windows, as said, and yeah, we'll.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, no, gosh, I'm sorry. We're specifically looking at the Windows installation process because the Mac installation process for our environment is almost the exact same, but just a tiny bit easier in one spot. So we'll highlight when there's the extra step for Windows.
Indeed.
Otherwise, for Macs, just do all the same stuff almost. If you're on a Linux system, we assume that you already love fussing with environments. So while we are here to pretend to be able to answer, well, you're a Linux user, aren't you?
Ish. I mean,
Oh,
I'm on
oh,
Windows
oh!
right now.
I love. Yeah.
In German, we say,
Uh,
sorry,
no. What do you say in German? The suspense is killing me.
we say Jein, a mixture of ja
Nine.
and nein.
It's a hard maybe.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah, let's get started.
absolutely. What we'll be doing is following this guide very, very closely. Folks in the chat, if you've got any questions or comments as we go, please feel free to flag us. We'll be keeping an eye on that. So I'm going to live read this as we go. So we'll follow these guidelines for setting up FreeCodeCamp locally on your system. This is highly recommended if you want to contribute regularly. Some of these contribution workflows, like fixing bugs in the codebase or curriculum, need you to run FreeCodeCamp locally on your computer. However, as you can see here, we've already got our first tip. If you're not interested in setting up FreeCodeCamp locally, consider using Gitpod, a free online dev environment. So it is possible to not have to do this locally on your machine. You can also have online development environments. However, we're going to do this. We're going to take the scenic route and install FreeCodeCamp locally on your machine. So start by...
I'm going to pause while you're doing that.
Yeah.
I want to just address the concept of local really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're using FreeCodeCamp as a web application, that exists on their servers. That exists out in the wild, in the wilds of the internet. And that's where it lives. It lives on those servers, on those computers, being served to you. Whereas a local version is when you go and get this code, and it's running on your local machine. And local literally means that one right here.
Yeah.
Like the one on your desk or the one under your desk, if folks still have those.
Oh, I'm doing that right now. So I've got one under my desk.
Very old-fashioned.
It's a big chunky PC.
Chunky being a very important technical term.
Absolutely. So we'll start by installing the prerequisite software for my operating system. We primarily support development on Linux and Unix-based systems. Our staff and community contributors regularly work with the code base using tools installed on Ubuntu and macOS. So we can see here they also support Windows 10 via WSL2, which you can prepare by reading this guide. So for those not familiar with it, WSL2 is a tool that comes actually included in your Windows, which stands for Windows Subsystem for Linux 2. So we have here an article very kindly provided by them, Set up FreeCodeCamp on Windows Subsystem for Linux, or WSL. We'll be calling it WSL from here on out. So most machines that run Windows should be able to run WSL2. Fun fact, that's how I do, I would say, 90% of my work on WSL. So Jess, when you asked me if I'm a Linux person, that's kind of why I answered with a yang, because kind of.
Yeah. Yes, but your Linux lives inside your Windows.
That's correct.
And for folks who might be saying oh, Windows or Linux or Mac, I have a Dell, what are we doing here? These are the different sort of operating systems or pieces of operating systems that your computer is running. If you've got a Mac computer and you haven't added anything to it, you're probably running a Mac OS, a Mac operating system. If you've got the little, I don't want to tell people how old I am, and I haven't used a Windows machine in a while. Do they still have? They don't still have that little button in the bottom left-hand corner that has a little Windows flag. That's not a thing anymore, is it?
Oh, you mean on the keyboard, the Windows key?
Oh no. So it used to be you would scroll down to the bottom, and they'd have a little. Oh Jesus! It's a start button, isn't it? It was called the start button in the 90s.
It's still here. And it's still called the start button.
Is it?
Hey, here we go.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that still exists.
Thank you very much, Microsoft, for not making me feel too terribly old and out of touch.
Yeah, so I've already set up WSL on my computer. We've got some instructions here for enabling WSL, which Microsoft provides some documentation here for installing WSL on your machine. There's a handful of steps you'll have to follow, which will require you to open up your command line. So, what is a command line? Oftentimes...
So,
sorry.
Yeah. Oh, well, I was going to give you my terrible take. So, again, back in the dim mists of time, um, by which I mean the 80s, the operating systems on your computers didn't tend to be, I'm going to say, picture based to abstract this out as much as possible. You didn't have these graphic based interfaces. You had like DOS, which feels a lot like the command line. And the command line, when I talk to folks new to programming or when I talk to folks new to computing, it's a text based place for you to talk directly to your computer where you can often be more bossy.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just about every computer comes with a command line integrated. These take different names depending on your operating system. For example, on macOS, you'll find an app in the folder Applications and Utilities, an app called Terminal. That's where you're going to be able to do this sort of thing in macOS. In Windows, Microsoft have lately provided a new app called Windows Terminal, which you see here running on the right hand side of my screen. This is the Windows Terminal. Jess, do you reckon the size is okay? Or shall I make it a tiny bit bigger?
Well, I we've already determined that I'm old enough to be like, well, back in my day. So for the sake of my elderly eyes, please.
Ah,
Now, this is a terminal. This is your bossy place to be to tell your computer what for.
that is correct. Oh, I miss Commander Keen. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat. um, that's correct. This is where I can issue commands. It's just like being able to move my mouse around is called a graphical user interface. Being able to interact with my computer in a text-based fashion is called a command line interface. So in a
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So in a similar way to, for example, on macOS, interacting with a folder in Finder allows me to interact with those files. Interacting with files in here, as you can see, I'm in the this piece of text at the bottom here. This shows the current location in my computer where I am in my hard drive. So I'm in the home folder, inside the folder coding, and inside the folder open source. So that's kind of like the Finder window I have open right now, the folder open source.
And I think that for folks who are either new to the command line or are afraid to get started, um, it's reasonably hard to break something unless you add some special keywords that break. Um, oh, someone in the chat has let me know that my audio is a bit off. I'm going to let you run things for a second, and I'm going to go grab a mic.
Sounds good. I'll also reduce your volume slightly just for now. Thank you, Leaky. All right. Well, just does that. Yeah. So what we've got here is this way for interacting with our computer, so that we can issue those commands. So now that I've got that installed, now that I've got WSL installed, let's go back to that guide here, and having installed WSL, having installed Ubuntu, which is the Linux distribution. You see, Linux comes in a lot of flavors. And the one that we'll be using today is called Ubuntu, which is an operating system. So I'm going to quickly skip over this and make sure that I've got Linux running, I've got my terminal open, and we can finally get to the part where we're installing stuff. So set up Git. Git comes pre-installed with Ubuntu 18.04. Verify that your Git version with Git version. So I'm going to copy this, and now I'm going to paste it into my command line. So what I'm going to do here is put this on one side, put this guide on one side, and have my command line here on the other. So let's type in Git version. Here we can see that I've got version 2.17.1. Now on this guide, it's showing Git version 2.25.1, which indicates to me that my Git version is a little bit older, but I can still go ahead and use it. Just bearing in mind that I should update my version of Git pretty soon. So, optional but recommended. You can now proceed to setting up your SSH keys with GitHub. So, let's open that up and have a look what's going on here. Connecting to GitHub with SSH. Here, oh, let me make this a little bit bigger, folks. There we go. So, what we've got here is the ability to be able to set up GitHub so that I can use it from the command, so that I can interact with it from the command line. I recommend following this guide. I've already got this set up myself, and there's a lot to go into here with Git and SSH. So let's try and start going one step at a time. Git is the command line program that we'll be using to interface with GitHub. We can control the versions of our apps, integrate these pull requests that we talked about last time, and send them off to GitHub with this program. SSH, well, let's open it up and find out what it is. So, using the SSH protocol, you can connect and authenticate to remote servers and services. As you can see, a lot of these things are documented out there so that we can jump in and try and understand how these things work in order to be able to make our open source contributions. However, let it be known, I don't fully understand how SSH works. I don't fully understand how Git works. I can still interact with it. So if you're new to this and you're feeling like, oh my goodness, so many things coming in, that's all right. This is something that we learn as we go. This is something that takes time to interact with and get accustomed to. In any case, let's go back to FreeCodeCamp. So we've set up Git. Next step will be installing a code editor. So let's see. They say we highly recommend installing Visual Studio Code on Windows 10. It has great support for WSL and automatically installs all the necessary extensions on your WSL distro. Essentially, you will edit and store your code on Ubuntu with VS Code installed on Windows. Now, I've already installed VS Code, but let's open up their website and take a look. So, let me just make this a little bit bigger. So this is the website for Visual Studio Code. As the docs mentioned, this is a code editor that we'll be using to write, modify, save, and even do some terminal stuff, as you'll see soon, on our computer. And it allows us to use lots of different programming languages, to write lots of different programming languages with it. So, as said, I've already downloaded this, but as you see, the documentation links you to that, and we can carry on from there. Now, we can start up Visual Studio Code in two ways. One of them is to either open it up from Windows by typing in code. I've already got it running here. So when you open up Visual Studio Code, it'll look like this. It'll show you a latest set of changes, as well as the project you're currently working on, which at the moment is none, because I don't have a project to work on my computer yet. So that's all done. I'm just going to minimize here and come back here. So next up is Docker. Ooh, I've heard of Docker. Docker Desktop for Windows allows you to install and run database and services like MongoDB and Nginx. Well, this is a lot of things. This is useful to avoid common pitfalls with installing MongoDB or other services directly on Windows or WSL2. Follow the instruction on the official documentation and install Docker Desktop for your Windows distribution. There are some minimum hardware requirements for the best experience. So let's have a look at that documentation. As you can see, we're opening a lot of tabs here. So, install Docker Desktop for Windows. This page contains information about Docker Desktop for Windows system requirements, download URL, installation, and automatic updates. All that said, I don't really know from this yet what is Docker, but I can see here how to install it for WSL2. So, let's look that up. Just gonna Google here, what is Docker? So, Docker makes development efficient and predictable. Docker takes away repetitive, mundane configuration tasks and is used throughout the development lifecycle for fast, easy, and portable application development, desktop, and cloud. Docker's comprehensive end-to-end platform includes UIs, user interfaces, CLIs, command line interfaces, APIs, application programming interfaces, I think, and security that are engineered to work together across the entire application delivery lifecycle. Hey, welcome back, Jess.
Hello.
Ooh, that's very fancy. Let me make you a little bit louder. There we go.
Oh gosh, no one ever needs to make me louder. Sorry about the break-all. I was not having a panic attack with some duct tape. Very normal engineering things happening over here.
No stress. Everything's fine. We are currently looking into what Docker is.
Oh gosh, can I try? Because I'm terrible at this.
Please.
So Docker is a box that's not a real box that you can put digital things in to share them. It's like Dropbox or Google Drive, except it tends to be for things that are intended to run. So programs, databases. It's about if you want to do programming stuff together far away, but you're really fussy about how it's set up.
Yes.
About 20% of that was right?
I would say most of it was right. If not a good 99. I have to admit, that is much better than I would have put it, because I haven't used Docker a whole lot. I do have it installed on my machine here, and already configured to work with WSL2. So what we see here, for example, if I go on my configuration for Docker, I'm afraid I can't make it much bigger. Sorry, folks. Docker allows you to integrate it directly into the WSL2 based engine. So I've actually got Docker already ready to work between Linux and Windows. Yeah, so we've got installing Docker Desktop. That's done. We've configured Docker Desktop for WSL. As you can see, these folks have gone such great lengths to provide us with fantastic ways to provide us with fantastic docs to set up even on something that might seem obscure, like WSL. So once Docker Desktop is installed... Sorry.
No. I was just reading along. I was like, once Docker...
Exactly. This makes it so that the containers run on the WSL side, instead of running on Windows, you'll be able to access the services over HTTP localhost on both Windows and Ubuntu. Shall we go over what HTTP localhost is?
No. So, please, can we not do the whole HTTP protocol discussion? Because I don't have a computer science background. All of my abstractions around that will be like, oh, that's when the internet or a network or a process tells a thing to do a thing, and sometimes a thing happens. So that's not helpful. But localhost, yeah, we could do localhost.
Yeah.
So, I love how this stream is just me being like, here is my understanding of different technical terms in sort of friendly layman's terms. I think that localhost is when you take your browser and instead of saying, go give me that thing off the internet, you say, hey, go give me that thing that's going to feel like the internet, but it's local. It's on this computer here.
That's perfect. I would have said pretty much the same. Exactly. So yeah, we'll be running web apps off of our computer and accessing them through this localhost. So let's go to the next. Sorry.
Your friendly local non-internet internet.
Exactly. The local internet. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, so we'll be installing MongoDB from Docker Hub. Once you have configured Docker Desktop to work with WSL2, follow these steps to start a MongoDB service. Launch a new Ubuntu 18.04 terminal. Let's do that right now. So here on Windows...
That means start a new terminal, right? Like just open up a new tab there. It sounds very official and very scary, but it just means this thing you're doing, give us another one of those.
Exactly. So let's start super fresh. So we will open up here on Windows Terminal and we can choose which kind of terminal we want. We can do Windows PowerShell command line. These are the different types of command lines that Windows provides. But we want Ubuntu. We want to go into Linux.
We've already committed. Let's keep going.
Exactly. So let's make this.
Also, I think it's required, eh?
There we go. So we're now in our terminal. Launch a new Ubuntu terminal. Pull MongoDB 4.0x from Docker Hub. Now, this is cool. A lot of these documentation pages allow us to just copy paste. That's pretty cool. Now on.
Of course, you're going to get security people who are like, you should never copy paste code off the internet. And of course, you shouldn't generally copy stuff and put it into your terminal.
Very
But
fair.
this specific one is fine. Like it's on Ramon's computer, so it's fine.
Yeah.
It's one of like it's one of those security rules where you're like, never do this, except sometimes it's fine. Which is not a very good rule, is it?
Yeah. It's yeah, it's a double-edged sword. So if it's on documentations, most of the time we should be able to assume that it's safe.
And just like trick or treating, if you're not sure, ask a trusted adult. Like, oh, should I eat this apple? It looks a bit dodgy. No, no, don't eat apples you got for Halloween. Obviously, no, there's candy to be had. Um, but if you're looking through some documentation, especially stuff like FreeCodeCamp, where there's a community around it, be like, oh, hey, what happens when I type this? Or what does this do? And in this case, we feel confident enough where we know all these keywords. We're just going to do the thing, right?
Exactly. So let's do it. Let's type in docker pull mongo 4.0. So there we go. So now, until we see this purple bit appear again, it's safe to assume that the computer is doing its thing. So we are doing some Docker downloading stuff. What's happening is that Docker is downloading this MongoDB application and downloading and installing it into my machine. So this status downloaded newer image for Mongo 4.0. This looks good. This means that we've successfully installed MongoDB onto onto our computer. Now, we'll get into what MongoDB is as well.
So I'm gonna like folks watching live. Hello, my loves, and folks watching the replay later. I'm gonna do a terrible thing that you saw from online learning or from teachers back in the day to say, okay, well, if you're new to programming or if you're new to open source, what do we think MongoDB might be? Let's skip ahead.
Cool. Then I'll continue, shall I?
Of course.
Sounds good. So, start the MongoDB service at port 27017 and configure it to run automatically on system restarts. So here we've got a longer command. Let's go ahead and copy that. Copy to clipboard and paste it in here. Check this out. It's a bit small, so I'll read it out. Warning, you are about to paste text that contains multiple lines. If you paste this text into your shell, it may result in unexpected execution of commands. So a lot of the times these terminal programs, they've got your back. They try to look out for you. I'm going to paste in any case.
Yeah, like it's not the boss of you.
Exactly. So that's now pasted. I'm going to press enter. And it showed me a long thing. After some time doing this, you kind of start getting getting the feeling for when something looks like an error and it doesn't. My gut tells me that this launched fine. You can,
Nothing's red. And I'm seeing a lot of pull complete, pull complete, pull complete. Like,
yeah,
if nothing's yelling at us, stuff's fine.
it looks good to me. You can now access the service from both Windows or Ubuntu at MongoDB and localhost. Let's give that a try. For context, Linux is running separately from Windows here, but inside Windows. So what WSL allows me to do is to access things running inside Ubuntu from my Windows. So here I'm on Google Chrome. Let's open this up. See what's inside. I did something wrong, didn't I?
Not so wrong.
Let's try that again. You know what? I think there's a space, maybe?
Oh, and like that's going to be 90% of your problems working in the terminal, isn't it? It's either like, hey, give me your credentials. Are you allowed to be here?
Yeah.
Or you've typed something wrong. Please stress out about it for 45 minutes.
Exactly. So I've opened it up here on my browser, and it says here, it looks like you're trying to access MongoDB over HTTP on the native driver port. That, to me, sounds like MongoDB is running.
Like, hey, you're trying to get this thing you want to get and make it go. Like, yeah.
Exactly. So I would say good thing. I will admit, not an expert on MongoDB.
If we want, we could probably go and bully some of the MongoDB folks into joining us sometime to be like, hello,
Ooh.
is this working? They're not going to love it if we get them on for 2 minutes to be like, this is fine, right? Yeah.
Phone a friend kind of thing. So now comes Node.js and NPM. We recommend you install the latest LTS release for Node.js with a Node Version Manager NVM. Let's open that up and see.
Oh, good. I thought for a terrifying second you were going to ask me to translate that into polite language. And I was like, no, I don't know what an NVM is. No. Oh, it's a Node virtual machine?
Node Version Manager.
No, that makes way more sense.
The only reason I know this is from my Ruby days. We had something called RVM, Ruby Version Manager.
Well, I mean, now that I've heard all those words next to each other, that's just common sense, isn't it?
Why do we need a version manager for Node? What's going on here is that Node.js, being the engine that powers our back-end JavaScript apps that are running locally on Linux, this gets updated every now and then, right? And so what folks need to do to make sure that their apps run correctly is to specifically tell the computer, hey, run against this very specific version of Node.js. And with a lot of apps, across a lot of apps as developers, we sometimes need to have more than one version of Node.js sticking around on our computer, which is why folks have created these solutions to be able to switch between different versions of Node. So yeah,
I like to think of these as sort of online shopping portals, the ability to say, hey, I want this back issue of Node, or I want this specific back issue of Ruby. And I'm going to put this one in this application and that one in that application. And you could also tell it to update it. So you can get it as a subscription service and say, hey, just go ahead and keep giving me the new ones. I want that.
Yeah.
Which is a great idea if you want to break everything all the time. Or you could just say like, hey, I'm looking at this back catalog of old nodes. Please send me the node from 3. It's always going to be a version number. So it's not going to be like, oh, give me last autumn's node. But like, yeah, in this case, give me 4 something something. And I think it is literally 40 something something is what we want.
It would appear that what we want is not specified. Oh, you know what? I think that's in the previous page. Ooh. From FreeCodeCamp. We want version 14.x.
So 14 anything.
Exactly.
14.1's fine. 14.9's fine. Just give me some 14s.
Exactly. Node.js comes bundled with NPM. You can update to the latest versions of NPM with this command. I'm not going to do that today, but we can totally do that with accordingly. So now that you've installed the prerequisites, follow our local setup guide to clone, install, and set up FreeCodeCamp locally on your machine. So we're actually done here. We can go back to our original guide and make sure we've got all this. So we can go back to the terminal and type in node version. And I can see here I've got version 14.16.0.
So 14, I feel okay.
Yeah. We installed MongoDB already. We've got that running here. And npm comes bundled with node. I have no idea if this works. Let's find out. npm version. Hey, there we go.
I will go ahead and say that adding these little dashes before you tell Node or tell npm what to do are going to make your life a lot easier. If you just say Node version without those two little dashes,
let's do it.
Node's just going to be like, I don't know what you want here. So really, if you're going to tell Node or npm what to do, these two little dashes are just like, hey, do the thing. Oh.
So I tried running node version, and as you can see, that pardon me. As you can see, that that tried to run some JavaScript called version.
Yeah, or it's just like, thank you, but no thank you. Please have a nice day. I'm not going to be doing that. I can't find that. Come back and give me those dashes if you want to run the node command for show me the version.
Yeah. So we've got all of our prerequisites set up. So I would say we can, if you have a different version, please install the recommended version. We can only support installation issues for recommended versions. And we can see here troubleshooting. Let's take a quick glance in there and see what kind of troubleshooting is going on here.
Like, what could go wrong?
Yeah, a lot of the time, these folks, as they gather issues, you remember from last week we talked about issues on GitHub. A lot of the time, these folks will take this information and build like a center of knowledge where they deposit these common issues.
Yeah. So like, hey, this seems to go wrong for folks a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and create a, hey, here's stuff that often goes wrong list. And this is the kind of stuff that we were talking about in the promise we made to you about when things go wrong, where can you look for help? And what are the kinds of keywords that we're looking for here? So here we've got troubleshooting. That's a really good one to work for.
Totally.
Now, we've also got this error, and we feel like we know what this node error is. But if you do get an error message and you don't feel confident about it, you can throw that in quotes.
Oh yeah.
Up into your web search of choice. So
Absolutely.
You can throw that to DuckDuckGo. You can throw that to Google. You can throw that to Bing. It's not the 90s anymore. I've run out of Ecosia, which is the web search that is climate friendly. Yeah, all right. And usually you'll get a whole bunch of results of other people saying, what is this? This is broken. And often friendly and loving folks who are like, oh, this is broken for reasons.
Totally.
Here are your reasons.
Totally. In fact, this is a great way to get into open source, in my opinion, is to also, go on these websites like Stack Overflow, which is a website where a lot of people go to post their issues, their problems. A great way to be able to start getting into the flow of like talking to maintainers and stuff is when you can to go into these websites and answer those questions. Should you, of course, know the solution.
So yeah, if you get stuck, look for troubleshooting, look for FAQs.
Yep.
Sometimes there'll be forums or discords or chats where you can be like, hey, this is broken. Otherwise, head to it's very 90s to say like your like web searching option of choice. What did we call them? Did we call them? They're search engines. I need a coffee.
I think they were search engines for all the time. Yeah.
they were always search engines. I've just forgotten how the internet works. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So follow these steps to get your development environment ready. Install Git, we've got Git installed already. We've done we've covered these steps in the last few in the last instructions for setting up WSL. So we've set up an SSH key for GitHub. We've installed a code editor. We went with Visual Studio Code. Set up linting for your code editor. You should have ESLint running in your editor. Ooh.
Oh, they snuck that one in.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been describing things in plain language. What is a linter in plain, non-technical language?
Yeah, a linter is I was about to say program. Um,
Yeah.
I would say it's a hall monitor of sorts.
Okay, I've always gone for like a really, really fussy autocorrect for your code.
I like that more. That's better.
I mean, I like hall monitor, just somebody being like, excuse me, we want to go ahead and keep our margins clean. Thank you very much. Um, yeah,
Indeed.
hall monitor
Uh,
who does
ex-
the work for you, which is nice.
yeah, a lot of the time it'll take a look at your code automatically and can be configured depending on the project. So what's likely that's going on here is FreeCodeCamp has sort of laid out a set of rules for what their JavaScript or sorry, their code should look like. So that when this linter runs on it, um, it'll say, "Hey, in this project we like it this way." Think maybe a way to stick to the whole metaphor of school would be something like a set of rules for that specific school. So if you go from one school to the other, you know, think of a rule. Uh,
Oh, all of the rules I can think of that differ from school to school are like really rubbish ones around, oh, dress code or oh, like, um, but I think taking a step back, we're just saying, hey, use this linter, use this linter to, and I understand that prettifiers are a different thing, and I don't want to
yeah.
confuse this. Use this linter to make your code clean. Well, that's not helpful. Use this linter to format your code in a specific way. And it's this specific way that we ask you to do for this project. And these get to be really important because, like you just said, the rules are different at different schools and different open source projects or work and home projects. I hope you don't have too many home projects that folks are getting lots of downtime. Um, are going to have different rules around style. So instead of laboriously teaching yourself, oh, I must do it this way for this project and this way for this, you could just tell a linter and it just magically is not how code works, but let's go with magically. It goes through and cleans it up and sets you up and you're gone.
Absolutely. I also really love the way that Leaky wrote it here. It's a tool for cleaning lint out of your code sweater.
Leaky has just been continually helpful and charming. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. So, um, now we're at the step where we're forking the repository on GitHub. So, I am aware that we're coming up to time for our stream today. What you reckon, Jess? Shall we carry on for a
So
bit?
I I I think that an hour of us is a lot of us. Like I've got to be me and an hour is still too much me. How about we go ahead and we let folks go? But when we come back next week, what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to get this code.
Yeah.
And then we're going to jump into the issues and say, okay, we've got this code. Then we're going to get it running for you. So get a copy of that running locally. And then we're going to start looking around for what kinds of issues we might want to start with and how we can start manipulating the code and seeing it change in the local version of the application we have running. So we'll eyeball the kinds of changes we might want to make for real for our contributions. But next week we'll mostly focusing on get the code running, and make some small changes just to make sure we're making changes and we can see them as they run.
That
Everybody cool?
that sounds wonderful from my end.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much for all of your patience and all of your good wishes and for being such a lovely audience of the stream. And Ramon, thank you for your incredible grace.
And you, Jess, you are just so wonderful of this, and this is such a joy.
We're over the top saccharine. We should go before people get sick.
We're gonna be setting up a raid. I'm very new to Twitch, so I'm still learning what exactly that means. But we're gonna go and check out some other channel in action, some coders out there, and we'll see you here next week, just in time for Open Source Thursdays. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in.
Bye, folks. Thank you again.
Take care. Bye bye.